Hey all you cool cats and kittens, welcome back to Remote Learning with Miss Corwin. We are continuing our work on our narrative writing. We are now on day 3. Today is Thursday, if you're keeping track of the days that way. And yeah, let's begin. Let's actually take a look at what we talked about yesterday. So yesterday we discussed the story sequence. It might also be called a plot diagram, a story mountain, anything like that. So essentially we learned yesterday that we need to start our stories with exposition. All stories start with some sort of exposition. They introduce us to who the characters are, they tell us where the story is taking place, they tell us some of the background information so that we can understand the situation better. So this is falling under this beginning category. And then something happens in the story. Something sets the story in motion. It's our inciting incident. If our inciting incident didn't happen, our story would just be continuing with people living their lives, normal everyday lives for the entire story, and that's not interesting. Something has to happen to make the story start. So as the story is starting, we get some conflict. Our conflict is the problem in the story. Whatever happens that is creating a problem for the characters in the story. This whole section here is actually called our rising action. That includes everything after the inciting incident. Our rising action is just all the little things that happen that help build the story. They help make suspense, they help things pick up pace, they make things interesting. These are details about what our characters are doing, what's happening to our characters as they are continuing on whatever they are trying to do to fix this conflict, to fix this problem. Then we reach the climax. The climax is when there is nothing more that can be done here. The characters can't do anything else. Nothing else is doing anything to the characters, and it hits this point. In stories, if you think about maybe something like Sleeping Beauty, the climax would be this point in the story where the prince defeats the dragon. Or if you're thinking about like The Little Mermaid, it's the point where Ursula unfortunately gets killed. A lot of times, if there's like a fairy tale kind of story, this is where the bad guy gets defeated. So you can kind of think of it that way. In our personal narratives, our climax probably isn't going to be that dramatic, and that's okay. After that, we have our falling action. Our falling action is kind of when things are just winding down. Things are starting to come to an end. Any last little things are getting tied off, meaning like we are fixing everything up so the story's ready to end and people will be satisfied with our ending. And then we get the resolution. That means all of our problems have been solved, everything is good to go. This is where your "and they all lived happily ever after" might happen. Just another reminder, there are 5 things that we see in every story. So we see characters, so who is the story about? We see setting, so when and where does the story take place? That could include things, especially for the where, or not for the where, especially for the when, I should say. That could include things like the year, the season, the time of day, stuff like that. And I will show you an example of that in the next slide. We also have a plot, so that's what is happening in this story. What are the things that happen? Then we move on to conflict. There's a problem in the story. What is the problem? Because things can't just go on forever. That would be a boring story. You wouldn't want to read a story where everything was just the same every single day. You need some sort of problem to happen. And then finally, a resolution. How does the problem get fixed? Who fixes the problem? Does the problem kind of fix itself? Does somebody actively go out and make things better? So this is how the problem gets fixed. Every story has these things to it. Now, you might be thinking about a book like The Series of Unfortunate Events and say, but Miss Corwin, the problems don't get fixed. With a series, you would have to look at the entire series to understand all of these things. So if you're talking about Series of Unfortunate Events, we had the Baudelaire children. They are living, I don't think they specifically tell us where, and they actually don't tell us when either, which is a really interesting thing about the Series of Unfortunate Events. But we kind of get a feeling that it's taking place in like some kind of city at least. The plot is their parents pass away in a fire. The conflict is they are sent to live with Count Olaf, and then we don't actually get the resolution to the story for 13 books. And trust me, I read every single series of Unfortunate Events books when I was in 5th and 6th grade. It took a really long time to get to the ending of that story. So if you're talking about a series like Harry Potter or the Warrior Cats books or Diary of a Wimpy Kid, if it has like an extended storyline, then sometimes the resolution might not be in just one book. So I want to kind of give you an example of what I did for day 2's assignment. So day 2, your job was to start thinking about the story that you wanted to tell and think about the 5 elements that were going to be in that story. The story that I decided I want to tell was going to be about the very first time I saw fireflies. I grew up in California, and you don't really see fireflies, especially in Southern California where I lived. You might see them more up north, but I'd never seen fireflies before this point. So the characters, remember this is a real life story, so you can kind of think of characters as being like the people in your story. So the people that were there were me, I was there, my mom was there, and my little brother Alex was there. So those are the characters. The setting. So we were in an RV at a campsite. This was in summertime. It was 2006, and I could also mention that it was nighttime here. I could also mention that we were in Texas. So we were traveling across the country at this time. So that's where the setting was when I saw the fireflies. I was in a lot of different settings for that trip. But for this instant where I saw the fireflies for the first time, it was summer of 2006. It was nighttime. I was in an RV at a campsite, and I was in Texas. So for the plot of this story, I can kind of give you a little brief outline. So my mom had been driving our RV for days and days and days, and she was really tired, and so we pulled into a campsite, and we had parked, and my mom fell asleep super early just because she was so tired from driving for so long. Well, my little brother and I were really awake at that time. And then we noticed something was blinking outside, and so we took a look and we saw fireflies, and we were really excited. And so we decided that we wanted to try to catch some. So that's going to be our plot. The problem was we weren't allowed to go outside the RV without our mom's permission. And honestly, that's a fair rule. It was nighttime. We were in a state we'd never been in before. We didn't really know what we were doing because we were little kids. But we decided we were going to go outside and catch some fireflies. The conflict, the problem was we can't wake mom. We need to do this quietly. And then the resolution, so in the story, we end up going outside and chasing the fireflies and having a really, really nice time, and it was just a lot of fun, and it was like really pretty just to see all the fireflies. The resolution, the way we fixed the problem, I would say we didn't really fix the problem necessarily, but the way we dealt with the problem was we sneaked back in without mom waking up. So that way my story has all of these elements to it. And remember, these stories don't have to be the most exciting, fantastical things ever. You don't have to tell me about the time when you saved a little kid from drowning. I mean, I don't know if you've ever actually done that, but this is just a story that's about me chasing fireflies when I was little. It's not that big of a deal. It's not the most incredible, exciting story you've ever heard, but it was something that was important to me. So these are my elements. So what we're actually doing today is you have 2 slides to complete. These are slides 5 and 6, I believe, and they look like this. So your slide will look like this. It's blank, and I filled out my slides so that with my story so you can kind of see what it looks like. So when they say topic, they just mean like a general idea. If somebody was to ask you, what's your story about, and you were to give them like a 1 to 5 word answer, I would say it's about chasing fireflies. That's what my topic is. That's what my story is about. Time and place. These are both setting here. So I said it was nighttime, maybe 9 p.m. And place, I said campsite in Texas, and I also mentioned in an RV. That's my place. What happened at the beginning of the story? So we'd been driving for days. Mom is tired. What happened in the middle of my story? My brother and I see fireflies, and we sneak out to go chase them. What happened at the end of the story? We sneak back into the RV without mom knowing. Sensory detail. So this is talking about like your 5 senses, your sight, touch, smell, taste, and hearing. So here I only mentioned 3 of them. I would say try to mention at least 3 out of 5 of your senses. So I remember that it smelled like rain. I don't know if you've ever really thought about it, but rain has like a very specific smell. This has actually happened right after it was done raining. So it had that like nice, like springy, fresh rain smell. It was really, really hot. I remember that because I remember being in like a tank top and like shorts and sandals. Um, and it was dark. So those are some of my senses. That includes my smell, that includes my feeling, and that includes my sight. If I wanted to, I could also include the sound. The sound that I heard was like, you know when there are crickets at nighttime and it's just all you can hear is that like really nice cricket sound and it's really, really soothing and amazing? That's what it sounded like. I probably couldn't mention taste here. I don't think I had anything in my mouth. If I wanted to, I could probably mention that like I tasted like the sweat off of my face because it was just so hot, and that kind of like sweat taste is like kind of gross as it is, kind of has like a salty kind of taste to it. So if I wanted to include taste, I could find a way. And then it says emotions and feelings. These are going to be really important for later on. But so when we're talking about our emotions and feelings, I remember having feelings of excitement for seeing fireflies for the first time, but also having fear. I was afraid of waking up our mom because she'd be mad if she saw us breaking the rules. So this is slide number 5, I think, that you'll need to do. This one actually might be slide number 6. I'm not sure. You'll need to do both 5 and 6. So this is one of them. And then this one, it looks like this on yours. It says this story is about, then blank. First, this, next, this, then, this, finally, this. So I filled it out for my own too. So it says this is a story about the time my brother and I saw fireflies for the first time. Boom. First, we were tired from driving all day and stopped to camp while in Texas. Next, Alex, that's my little brother, Alex and I saw fireflies from outside the RV and went out to look at them. Then, we ran around quietly chasing the fireflies without waking our mom. Finally, we snuck back into the RV without mom waking up. So, so doing this slide here will help you out because it has this beginning, middle, end. It will help you with this one. This one includes like one more point to it. Actually, maybe 2 more if you want to include like the finally and these kind of like smaller details in here. But that's your job for today, is slides 5 and 6. But before you even get to that, we're going to be reading, well, I'm going to have YouTube read this story for us. It's called The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant and it's either Stephen or Stephen Gamble. So let's take a look at this and then you'll be good to go.
Well, hello there, it's Ani. Welcome to my house. Are you ready for a story? Today we're going to read The Relatives Came. If you have a copy, go get it so you can read along with me.
Ani's house!
The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Stephen Gamble. It was the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us up against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Then it was into the house and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s through the house. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras, so a few squeezed in with us and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden, and they fixed any broken things they could find. They ate up all our strawberries and melons, then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road, then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us, too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer.
The relatives in this story came from Virginia and stayed for a long time, didn't they? Have you ever gone to visit relatives who live far away or had them come visit you? Be sure to tell me about it in the comments below. I would love to know. I hope you enjoyed our story. Thank you for watching. See you next time. If you liked this video and want to see more, be sure to subscribe and leave me a comment.
Alright, neat. So, our storyteller was a little bit eccentric, but same kind of idea. It was just telling us a story about one time some relatives came to visit and the kind of silly things that happened after that. So, these stories don't have to be action movie exciting. They're just about real things that happen, and that's exactly what they're supposed to be. Because honestly, some of the stories that we have, but the most interesting ones are the ones that are true. In fact, I would probably argue that a lot of the times true stories can be more interesting than fictional stories, stories that are made up. But that's all I have for you today. Your job again is to finish the charts on slides 5 and 6. These will serve as a roadmap to help us stay organized as we continue reading. And by reading, I mean writing. But if you have any other questions, please let me know. I'm always here to help you out. And I will leave you with that. Remember, if the text is too small for you, there is a zoom in button on Google Slides. You just need to click it, and then when you're all done, click on the arrow button so that you can type. But that's all I have for you today. I will see you later, everybody. Bye.